Morning! First day back in the workshop for 4 weeks and I can't wait to get started on this one. I'm going to build a outdoor dining table. This will be part 1. Part 2 will be next week and that will be 3 to 4 seater benches that will go alongside the table. But today I've got all this treated timber that I roughly cut to length a month ago. The legs, which I need to start on first, are 4x4s. In hindsight, I wish I'd have bought 3x3s because of saw capacities and one thing and another, but I'll make it work. So, without further ado, let's crack on. So yeah, 4x4s, bit chunky looking. I couldn't get a good straight cut on any of my saws because I haven't got anything that will slice through 4 inches, and they're also a bit chunky looking, so a little bit of elegance required. And I'll take these down carefully to just over 3 inches, about 80 centimeters. And while you're watching that, I didn't realise that music was so divisive on YouTube, but apparently it is. But I like a bit of music in the background, 'cause it's what I prefer when I watch videos. I try and keep it to a low volume, and with my drone it can only add to it. It's not like we're taking away from the world's greatest orator. So it was sunny, I was back in the workshop, and I wanted some feel-good 80s American generic rock. Anyway, back to the legs. I eventually get them all down to the same width, and then that allows my 8-inch miter saw blade to just about square off the ends. Then I set up a makeshift stop block and get all the legs the same length, because I've found that a table works best when the legs are the same length. The food tends to stay in one place. So 4 legs, all the same dimensions, and here I am just rounding over. This little Katsu route has been brilliant. Once I upgraded my router bits the other week, it's been absolutely great for these little jobs. Smooth. Then it was time to give my first outing to the Metabo sander. Now, first thoughts are, it's built solid. It's a little bit high and it's quite heavy, but it's a bit of a beast and I really enjoyed using it. And I didn't get none of the shaky hands that I used to get after excessive sanding with my old one, which is good. You do have to have a good firm grip if you're doing one-handed, sort of rounding over edges and so on. And it's also got a little button for maximum removal, like a turbo. I think they call it a turbo button. But first time using it, I was impressed. So with the legs done, it was time to move on to the aprons. So there's going to be 2 short aprons for either end that will attach into the legs, and then 2 long aprons. So here I am cutting the short aprons at the same time to make sure they're the same length. I've clamped them up, as you can see, and there goes my dust extraction, which isn't the best on this miter saw, I've got to say. and here I am cutting the long aprons. So as you can see, that's how they will attach. No fancy joinery at this bit, just two big long 125mm outdoor construction screws. So they're going to fit in like that. Then I will have a big long stretcher down the middle. These two, I'll trench out the legs as I am doing here, and then I can put that support in. The trenching feature on this saw is atrocious. It slips, and I'll muck up some of the heights here because the saw goes too deep, and here I am thinking, oh, what's going on? So I end up knocking out the waist and then deciding I'm better off with my circular saw, which once locked in does not budge, and that's what I do for all my subsequent trenching. So these are the legs I'm trenching here, and there'll be a support that just houses in here. They're all 4x2s or 2x4s. The apron, the stretcher, the supports. As you can see here. I'll clean it up with a chisel before moving on to the other two legs and repeating. If it's your first time watching my channel, welcome. Every week I do a new woodworking video and chart me starting a woodworking business. So if that's your sort of thing, if you'd like to consider dropping me a like and subscribing, that would be great. Thank you. Now it was time to glue the supports in to the trenched cut. So what I do is use the short aprons to make sure it's straight and the correct width, and then just glue here, no screws. Put that in, clamp it up, and then coming up is where I realised I probably should have put the glue in both joints first. This was a bit awkward, but there we go. And I'll clamp that one up as well. Now here I'm making a little template because 2 screws have got to go into the short apron and 2 screws have got to go into the long apron. So to avoid those 2 screws going at opposite angles clashing, I make this little jig and mark up so I know that short, long, short, long. So here I am squaring off the little jig, and I know that this is the short apron. So I'll clamp it up and then I can mark, and then that's the long apron, so I know that the screws won't clash with each other. So with the Forstner bit, I've made a little recess for the screw head to sink, and then I just pre-drilled with about a 5mm bit. Cleaned up the hole. Here I've put a couple of clamps just to hold the wood in place, and I'll glue up the short apron ends, slide it onto those clamped pieces of ply and sink the big long screws. And I think with these screws and the glue, even though the glue's in the end grain, I think this will be totally strong enough. There's nothing like that plasticky tasting tea in a flask, is there? Marvellous. Right, so day 2. But really it was about 5 days ago when I last worked. I've had a few things to do, and today I'm hoping to get the table finished. This is where we were last at. We've got that nicely glued up and settled in the joint. We've got this screwed in with these, so they're not going anywhere. Now the next stage is to attach, if you can see these holes here, the 2 long stretchers, apron, whatever you want to call it, and then there's going to be a stretcher down the middle. So that's the plan. I'm going to have to work outdoors today because this will be too large to get out of the workshop door. I may have to finish the tabletop off in situ because I don't think, being on my own, that I'll be able to carry it down. The weight's a bit of an issue, but also it's quite cramped getting out of here. Hopefully I can get this done, and then I'll be moving on to getting the benches done. Without further ado, let's crack on. Plastic. So with my saw, I've just knocked the ends off, and for the stretcher that's going to go the length of the table between these 2 supports, I decided to make a little trenching cut. So here I'm finding the centre. It probably wouldn't need it, but I just felt better if it was just sunk maybe an inch or 25mm into that support. And I just knock out the waste with my chisel. And there you go. Clean it up with a bit of sandpaper. Here I'm finding the centre of each leg, so I can drill a pilot hole before attaching some little outdoor rubber feet, because I don't want the wood touching the patio and it will be too heavy to turn over and put feet on later. Squared it off even though no one will see it, and then it was down to its final resting place. Yet again attaching these little supports. This was one of those jobs that on camera I've made it look a lot simpler. It probably took me about 20 minutes with things falling over and trying to hold it in place. But you don't want to see all the pratfalls, so I've got the long aprons on, bit of glue, and screwed it in. This apron I've clamped up a little bit because it had twisted slightly. There we go, onto the next long apron. I love driving these screws home, there's something so satisfying about it. They drive like a dream. And check it's all square, good enough for me. And then here I am measuring that middle bit, and I failed to film it, but yeah, I screwed and glued that into the little recesses, and I also put a centre support across before giving it all a coat of preserve prior to attaching the top. Now the top, off camera, I sand, I think there's 6 2x6s, and the aim here was to screw the 2 outer planks so I knew that they were consistently distanced from the frame, and then I could space by eye the middle 4, leaving little gaps. Here I'm just making sure that I'm going to hit the centre support before pre-drilling all the holes. I did think about attaching from below or plugging the gaps, but in the end I thought this is an outdoor table, this can have a few screw holes. And there we go. Unfortunately the plank to your right was bowed, and I do try and bring it in a little bit, but there wasn't a lot I could do. So yeah, just attaching the outside planks, and then it was pretty easy just to space by eye and sink the middle four. And at this point things were really motoring along. And then I could give the whole tabletop a coat of preserve. It's a clear preserve, but so it shouldn't really affect the colour, but it does darken it slightly. And I may even give it another coat. I'll see how much I've got left over after I've done the benches. I want this to last. It's chunky, it weighs a ton, and I'd like to know it's going to stick around. And here are all the final shots. And that was the next day after it had dried. And there you go, a nice chunky outdoor dining table ready for some benches. And that'll be next week. And if you've got this far, as ever, thanks for watching.